Do you want to become a talk show host? Do you have a great idea? Passionate World Talk Radio is currently looking for podcast hosts for our Internet Talk radio station. Please email us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com with your name, email address, cell phone number, and podcast topic. In return, you will receive a 3-minute intro on air to a live audience about your podcast. Remember, just email us your name, email address, and your podcast topic, and in return, you will receive a free 3-minute intro on the air. How cool is that? Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
Hello, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, where we educate, enlighten, and entertain. You know, I listen to this podcast, folks. Are you interested in the nursing profession, being a nurse? Do you know someone who's interested in going into nursing? Then you're going to want to listen to my next guest and buy her book. First, I want to thank Jeannie White for producing the show and writing the blog. Please read the blog because it will have information about my special guest. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio Network. And the opinions of the guests may not represent those of the host or of the station. Folks, I'm so excited. Okay, I get excited very easily about all my special guests, but this special guest, the book she wrote, I'm going to tell you right now, you need to buy this book and give it as a gift for really anyone interested in going into the nursing profession. I am a retired licensed practical nurse. This book is 100% and beyond spot on, 100% the truth. And my guest, which I hope I say last name correctly, I want to welcome Nancy Congleton, RN. Did I pronounce your name right, Nancy? If not, you can pronounce it.
Thank you so much for having me, Betsy. It's Congleton.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Chatting with Betsy, folks. I'm very informal. We have a good time. We laugh. I don't take, I believe in having a good time. So, yeah, do I have trouble pronouncing some people's names? I sure do. Nancy, I love your book.
Thank you.
We were, saying before, it's so 100% and beyond spot on. I know why you wrote the book, but could you please tell the audience why you wrote the book and what you would like for them to take away from your book, which is called Autopsy of the NP, which is nursing profession. It would be nice if I pronounced the name of the book, so I did.
Yes.
I get so excited.
That's okay. I graduated nursing school, and I was out there, and Betsy, I wasn't practicing very long at all, and it was just like a slap in the face. Nursing school they do a great job at covering drugs, disease, and death, all the things that you have to know to sit for your state license. But there are so many other things that they just don't teach you. They don't teach you about the legal issues. They don't teach you about all the relationship dynamics, the unexpected realities. There's so many things that aren't covered, and I just quickly got hit with all of those, just kind of, one right after another. And then I started seeing all of these nursing students that were doing their clinicals like I had done years before, and I was just like, I have to write this book. I have to give people a heads up about all the negative things about the profession that most people just don't know.
Absolutely. And when I was reading this book, it's so accurate. I love that you don't sugarcoat. I love people who are very open, and honest, as your book is, because your book does not sugarcoat at all. You tell it like it is, and I love that. I'm from New Jersey. I love that. A lot of people, they want to sugarcoat it. No, this is reality, folks. You have to get this book. I'm serious, especially if you think about going into nursing. Not that we don't want you to go into nursing. Nancy wants you to be prepared because,
exactly.
as you said, Nancy, nursing school doesn't prepare you. I mean, I tell people my age. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm 63. When I graduated from practical nursing school, it was 1976. So, I know things have changed. But even back then, it was drummed. You need to chart. You must chart or you didn't do it. It's a legal document. And that is so important, and you bring that up in your book. What would you like to say about that, Nancy?
I've kind of seen a transition in the 18 years that I've practiced. They kind of went from charting everything about a patient to charting by exception, so just charting what was outside normal limits or what was critical. But, we're in a society that, lots of people, unfortunately, are sue happy. They're looking for somebody to blame. And so, and I think mixed in with the fact that the nursing shortage is just getting worse, sometimes nurses, they don't have time. In reality, they don't really have time to go back and chart all of these little intricate things, but they have to, because if you're called to court or if your supervisor calls you out about something that's not documented, giving an explanation then is not going to save you. It's not going to stand because you didn't document it. So you have to, even if that means you stay late, even if it means you give up 5 minutes of your lunch break, if you even get one, you've got to make time for it.
Absolutely. And I can tell you I worked the night shift. There was many mornings I came home late because I had to do my charting. That's when we did it by writing in the good old days, before computer. Now it's computerized, which would be a lot more difficult for someone tech challenged like myself, but you still have to document it. And I know there's different, types of charting. My last nursing job had changed to, I think it was called the SOAP form of charting. I think that's the name of it. Subjective, objective, action plan. Is that it, Nancy?
Well, that's not one that I recognize from today, but hey, it sounds like a good idea.
Oh, really? Yeah.
To follow those things.
Yeah. That's back in the old days. But that even was, a change from what I was used to. And I love how you, talked about that nurses can be mean, because I can attest to that firsthand. And why, I don't know. I don't understand it. What's your take on that, Nancy?
I think it's maybe a couple of reasons. One, there are just mean people out there. Let's face it. I think in probably every walk of life, every profession, there are just people that want peace and unity, and others that are probably miserable in their own lives to some degree, and so that comes out in their job. I also know that the medical profession is stressful and hectic. And I think some people, their coping mechanism is to be mean and snippy and, throw somebody else under the bus or take it out on somebody else, instead of finding healthy ways to deal with that stress of working a 12-hour shift and, working in ER or ICU. I definitely feel like there's more meanness in the critical care areas than in some of the others. But it affects you. My goodness, if you're a nurse and you're working and another nurse is mean to you, or they're always giving you the hardest assignment every single time you come to work, it changes how you feel.
Yes. Yes, it sure does. And, you know, I could say I had a trouble. This is where I learned never let anyone intimidate you, ever. Don't ever give anyone that power. I worked night shift. There was a nurse on day shift, and she would give me a hard time. No matter how I gave report, it was never good enough. I'd be in detail. And then this other nurse, because she was dating the supervisor's son, this is how she gave report. Everybody was okay. Good night. And that was fine. Are you
right?
So I went to the head nurse, and I said, that's your job as the head nurse, if I'm not doing something right, to correct me and show me how to do it right. I said, so you can show me how to give reports if I don't give it correctly. And it's not right for you to, talk about me and other nurses to talk about the problem. You need to come to me so I can fix the problem. And if you don't come to me and show me how to do it correctly, then, or how you think I should do it, then it's not going to be corrected. And, I had to say something, which was really very difficult for me at that time in my life, because I didn't stand up for myself back then. And I learned the hard way, you just cannot let people treat you like that. And I would be so nervous, wanting to do it perfectly, that I'd end up making a mistake because I was so nervous and let this person intimidate me. So what would you suggest to someone in that situation?
Well, I talk about this in the chapter about mean nurses because I've kind of learned there's kind of a fine line. There's different ways you can handle it, but here's my number one concern. If you're working in a critical care area or an area where another nurse has to relieve you for lunch or check on your patients, if you're with a patient, down the hall in CT, if you totally throw down with a mean nurse, that nurse is not going to have your back. If if you're trying to go to lunch or you're trying to even go grab your cold sandwich out of the fridge to bring back, if you throw down with somebody in one of those areas that require that team element, they may not have your back. So I kind of make a couple of suggestions. Number one, if you can ignore it and continue working and kind of get past it, sometimes the bullying will actually stop. It's almost like they're testing you, and then they'll get to a point they're like, okay, it's no fun anymore. I'm not riling this person up. Okay. And then things will kind of settle down. But if it's a situation that mean behavior is causing concerns with patients, where patients are not being taken care of, or where a nurse says they'll cover for you and then they ignore something critical on your patient while you were gone. If it becomes a patient issue, a safety issue, then you've got to, if you can't work it out with them, you've got to go up the chain of command. So your supervisor, manager, HR, then you've got to go up. Because that's the thing about the nursing profession. A lot of the areas require nurses to work together and have each other's backs.
Right. That's right. What advice would you give to someone who's considering going into the nursing profession before they take college? Yeah.
Before they
take
that
go to
leap.
Nursing school. Yeah.
Well, one of the things, there's a couple of things. One is if they know anybody that's a nurse, whether it's a family member, an acquaintance, their neighbor that they know that they say hi to, if they know anybody that's a nurse, sit down with them, have a cup of coffee with them, have lunch with them, tell them all the ugly, negative things. Now, there are lots of good things about the nursing profession, so I don't want that to get drowned out. But definitely ask that person, what are the negative things? What are the things you wish you had have known before you did this? And get all of that information out. And then ask them, okay, are you still glad that you went to nursing school? Are you glad you did it? Do you have any regrets? What would you tell me going into it? So one is talk to those you know that are nurses. And then the other thing is, if you're living somewhere where there's a large hospital or any hospital, even if it's a small one, go to HR. See if you can do any type of shadowing. See if you can, get cleared to shadow a nurse on a med-surg floor or any area that they'll allow you to. Just talk to HR. Say, hey, I'm interested in becoming a nurse, but I kind of want to get a better feel for it. Do you have any type of program where I can be a part of, where I can kind of shadow and see some things before I jump in?
That's a good idea. I think they have something like that where I live, or they did, where you shadow a nurse, like a student day or something like that. I forgot what it's called. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Or even I don't know if they could do it now because of COVID, but I was a candy striper when I was 15.
Yes.
And, get the ebb and flow of the hospital. And even though I still was short-staffed, I still went for it. I still did. And it was, always short-staffed. I'm glad nurses are, speaking up and being vocal. Also, Nancy, a lot of, now it's more so now that people don't talk about patients because of the HIPAA laws, but back in the old days, sometimes you would say, oh, do you, that patient so-and-so, or, if your friend was in the hospital or your mother's friends were in the hospital, they would say, oh, how's so-and-so doing? What's wrong? And you would tell them because there wasn't the HIPAA laws. But now you can't do that. You can't talk about anybody, even if they're a relative. You can't reveal any information. It's against the law.
Absolutely. And I think it's kind of interesting because right now we're really in the midst of a culture where everybody talks about everything, everybody shares everything, what food you ate and where you went and if you're sick, and, everybody just shares everything on social media. And I think it's kind of hard on the next upcoming round of nurses to kind of rein that in, that, hey, I can't talk about this unique situation with this patient in the elevator or in the lunchroom or in the break room because of HIPAA. And, some nurses are just sharing experiences, sharing cool things. But then there's definitely also going to be those opportunities where people want to gossip, where people know somebody that's in the hospital. They know a patient that's on the floor, and so they want to gossip. They want to, get all the juicy details out. And but we have to be mindful of that, and it's not right. People's privacy is their privacy. So it's definitely something that's hard on the generation of nurses.
Yes, because everything with the media, excuse me, is just out there. I can understand nurses having a conference in a conference room. You want to discuss the patient, the learning experience. That's fine. That's different, but not in the cafeteria, not in the elevator. That's to be, contained to a certain area. What else would you suggest, Nancy, for someone going into nursing nursing's a great career, and you will never have a problem getting a job because there's a shortage of nurses, and there's going to be a severe shortage of nurses as nurses are retiring. So, that's, you'll always have a job. But what would you say to someone going into a field, like your best advice going into it as to what to do or what to expect from nursing.
Well,
that
yeah.
might be a mouthful, right?
No, you cut out a couple of times, so I was trying to make sure I understood the question.
Oh, what advice would you give to someone going into nursing to survive? That would be a good question. To survive nursing. Yes.
To survive nursing. Well,
to survive.
So there's a couple. Yeah. There's a couple of things. One, I would definitely recommend that, especially as a new nurse, you try to go into an area that fits your personality. And here's what I mean. If you're an adrenaline junkie, if you're fast and furious, if you're spontaneous, if that's your personality, then ER or one of the critical care areas will probably be great for you. But if you're an introvert, if you're very methodical, if you kind of have an OCD personality to where you really have to check things, 5 or 6 times before you do something, then you want to steer more towards newborn nursery or outpatient recovery or maybe a medical floor or surgical floor. That's one thing that can help you from the start. It'll just help that transition. After you get some experience, it's easier to go to another department that is different from your personality or has a different pace or is crazy. But starting off, it's really good to kind of pay attention to those things of, hey, what fits my personality? This will be a good place for me to start. The other thing to survive is, this is going to sound weird for a second, don't be afraid to quit. Don't be afraid to quit. And what I mean by quit, I don't mean quit the profession. I just mean quit the area. A lot of times we get stuck in a rut because we don't want to change. But, if you worked in an ER for 5 years and you're totally burned out on working in the ER and you're getting anxiety every time you go into work, okay, stop that. You don't have to die on that hill. The nursing profession is vast. And if you want to survive in it, shake it up, change it up. Leave the ER and say, hey, I'm going to go work labor and delivery, or I'm going to go work pediatrics. There is an additional learning curve because once you get into that department, you're going to have to learn some things that are applicable to that specialty of nursing. So you're going to have to get over a little hump before you feel like you're, good and firmly planted. But it changes things up. It changes the scene. That's one of the things that I brag about this profession. You can actually change careers multiple times without leaving the profession. So do it.
That's right.
Change it up.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Back in the old days, before you were allowed to be in a specialty, you had to be at a med-surg floor for at least 6 months to a year before you could go to a specialized area. I don't know if they still do that or not, but that was back in I call it the Stone Age of when I started out working. But, there's so many opportunities. If you're an RN, you could go be a nurse practitioner, nurse anesthetist.
Right.
Home health care, as you know, Nancy, is going to be very, very big.
Right.
I mean, it is now, but as baby boomers are aging and want to stay in their home, you're going to see a huge increase in needing home care RNs. And, working in a doctor's office, I mean, you're right, the opportunities are definitely there. Some people, take time for raising their children and go back in it, or, they arrange their schedule according to their children's schedule. And there are really great opportunities, and it is a wonderful profession. It takes a special type of person. You have to have a thick skin because you're going to get insulted by members and patients, doctors, and it's just, I love, nursing school doesn't teach you all these other things. You learn really as you go. And,
right.
And which is true. back in the day, I worked in a hospital I had a nursing school, a 3-year nursing school. So they would put their new grads out on the floor in charge. A new grad in charge. Yeah. Me, an LPN, a new graduate, and an aide. And that's crazy. That's just, you're talking about being baptized by fire.
Yes.
Yeah. You got baptized by fire back in those days. Has it changed? Do you know, Nancy? Do they do it different now?
Well, back to the comment you made about, being on med-surg for at least 6 months, that is still the preferred idea. But there's a lot of new nurses that if they're gung-ho about, ER is what they've always wanted or ICU is what they've always wanted, there are hospitals that are hiring them in. They have a longer orientation period, but some of them are hiring them in. So some of that has changed a little. And I do think to a certain extent it is still, for a lot of nurses, being baptized by fire. I hadn't been a nurse very long, and I wasn't deemed permanent charge, but there would be times when I would be charged in the NICU on night shift, and I hadn't been a nurse that long. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, but I had more experience than some of the other mix that was there, and so, hey, tag, you're it. And so that is still happening to some extent, being thrown out there.
Yes, I used to float a lot. I learned to be very flexible, but I didn't think it was fair to put me in ICU, CCU. I was a nurse rec the whole night because I'm not familiar with that unit, or the emergency room. And I didn't like when I would get, thrown in those situations. It is. You either sink or you swim. And there was really no one to nurture. You're there for, a shift. You get by the best that you can. And just, do the best you can. But it's very stressful. I found that it was, very, very stressful. And I just agree with you about, find and specialty that fits your personality. And that could change. When you're younger, you might like the ER, the excitement, or ICU. You get, older, you might say, oh, I'm burnt out. Give me the nursery. something peaceful. Or do, like work in one of those cardiac labs or doing, assisting with the endoscopies and colonoscopies, to do something like that. Nancy, I enjoyed your chat with me and talking about your book. Is there anything else that you would like to say to the audience and how they could get your book? And how they could contact you if you would like them to. It's up to you.
Yes. So my website is www.nursenancyrn.com. And then my book is available on Amazon. And, I have priced my Kindle edition at 99 cents. I just want as many people, if they're interested, I just want it to be affordable. And I want it to help them. And, I think our brains are amazing. If we know what to expect about a situation, our brain just immediately starts working out and being prepared for those things and accepting those things when they happen. And it's just going to provide a much smoother transition. So, and anybody's welcome to reach out to me with any questions that weren't covered on the show.
Thank you. Oh, I have to say this. This is funny. I might start coughing because I laugh. Your name is Nancy, and you're a nurse. So we used to call the goody two-shoe nurses Nancy Nurse.
Oh, no.
So, did you ever hear that? The ones that really, went by the book, the ones that were,
yes.
I know it's like, yeah, what I'm talking about. I used to call them Nancy Nurse. And I'm thinking, I was wondering if you recall that.
So I didn't know that, but I do know there's like the Nurse Nancy children's books. I have heard of those.
Really?
And yes, Nurse Nancy children's books. Yes. Yes. And it's so funny that you said that because most of the time, I am per protocol, per policy, by the book most of the time. So that's funny.
So see, folks, I can't help it when I cough. I mean, when I laugh or talk, a lot, I cough because of my lung condition. So I said that cracked me up. I wonder if Nancy knows that. We're just I love having a good time. I love chatting, and that's chatting with Betsy. It's about getting resources out there and having an enjoyable podcast. So I want to thank you, Nancy, for coming on. I want to recommend to the audience to contact Nancy, get the book if you know any young teenager, male or female. There's a lot of males going into nursing now. Buy them this book. And I think it's a great gift. I wish there was a book like that when I was younger. And, folks, if you missed any of this podcast, you can catch it again wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. It is free to subscribe to Chatting with Betsy on your favorite podcast channel outlet. And I want to thank you, the listeners, for listening to my podcast. And please share it. And you can even rate and review it. I would appreciate that. And I want to tell everyone, please be kind in this world that we live in because we need it. We need to show the love and the kindness. And, yes, I am a child of the 60s and 70s, so I sound like a hippie. But I wasn't a hippie. I was too young. I just believe in being kind to each other. So until we chat again, this is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy and Passionate World Talk Radio Network. Bye-bye, everybody.
Do you want to become a talk show host? Do you have a great idea? Passionate World Talk Radio is currently looking for podcast hosts for our Internet Talk radio station. Please email us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com with your name, email address, cell phone number, and podcast topic. In return, you will receive a 3-minute intro on air to a live audience about your podcast. Remember, just email us your name, email address, and your podcast topic, and in return, you will receive a free 3-minute intro on the air. How cool is that? Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the Internet.